Hi everyone, for today's book review we're going to be checking out this wonderful book, The White Ships, New Zealand's First World War Hospital Ships. This book exclusively looks at the trials and tribulations and adventures of two vessels, the Maheno and the Marama. It looks at how they were converted from their passenger configurations into hospital ships, how the hospital section was organized, and believe it or not, it was extremely troublesome, and then how the reality of tending to terribly wounded men affected the crew and the troops themselves and their wartime careers. This book is told with a selection of wonderfully lucid accounts of the various people who were involved, and this book doesn't just tell us the story of the troops and the nurses and the doctors and the crew members, but the company officials, the politicians, the generals that needed the hospital ships and for whatever reasons had to use them and send them out, and the various politics at play in the background. It's a big story and it's told very well. You go from the intimate to the international. Both vessels had admirable careers as hospital ships in the First World War, and their entire career is covered. There is a wonderful chapter at the end that also looks at their careers after the First World War. In the case of the Marama, it did not survive the Great Depression, and with the advent of new tonnage was sold for scrap. The Maheno would have gone down that same path, but on the way to the scrapyard it got wrecked in Fraser Island, which is in Queensland's far north coast, Queensland being the state of Australia, so it's an Australian shipwreck now, and it's also one of the most photogenic and accessible wrecks. The wreck is still there and still visible to this day. This is a wonderful book that looks at the story of hospital ships from so many different perspectives, and by using just these two ships we understand the complexities and the difficulties and the pains and the occasional joys that happen on board a hospital ship. And you can essentially take all those troubles and problems and you can relate it to hospital ship operations of almost any nation involved in any conflict. And on that point, while I was researching this, I had a look to see just how hospital ships are covered in literature, and there's actually a fair amount there. For a wonderfully illustrated and detailed look at hospital ships in the Second World War, you cannot go anywhere beyond David Williams' book Lifeline Across the Sea. This is a fantastic and well illustrated book, and honestly anything by this man is top notch. Going back to the First World War, there's a couple. So there's the War on Hospital Ships, 1914 to 1918, which looks at hospital ships that were either torpedoed or mined or in some way, shape or form lost in the Great War. For a British perspective, we have the wreck of the Rohilla, which was a British hospital ship that got wrecked in that conflict, and this book focuses on the wrecking event itself. Needless to say, of course, anything regarding the hospital ship Britannic is also worthy of inclusion. And then if we go across the Atlantic to the United States, we have this intimate account of life on board the USS Comfort, a hospital ship that was unfortunately attacked during the Second World War. And then for a much broader American perspective, it's quite hefty, may I also recommend Hospital Ships of World War II, an illustrated reference by Emery Massman. This looks at all the American hospital ships. And lastly, for a trans-Tasman perspective, may I also recommend the simply titled Hospital Ships, However, this book looks at the Australian hospital ships of the Second World War. And of particular interest is the last ship mentioned here, the Oranje, which was a fantastic example of how good cooperation between the officers' crew and the medical corps led to a very happy and efficient ship. Something that was contrasted in the white ships with the Maheno, where the medical staff hierarchy clashed terribly with the ship's captain and officers. Back to the white ships though. This book is a 5 captain's hats. It is a comprehensive story that is well told in beautiful, sometimes almost explicit language, which adds so much personality to it. And as no doubt you've been seeing up here, it is profusely illustrated. All the photos are perfectly reproduced, of course, considering the vintage and the time. Not every photo is going to be a crystal clear glass negative shot, but everything is produced as well as they can be. In between, there are a couple of fact boxes thrown in, and there are a few color slides added throughout the book as well, including a couple of beautiful color paintings done by an eccentric New Zealander who would then sell these paintings for beer money. So there's just plenty there. This is an authentic, comprehensive, well-illustrated look at what it took to convert passenger ships into hospital ships, how to run them, and all the challenges of taking care of these poor unfortunate troops, and all the various tensions and adventures that happen between the troops, the patients, the doctors, the nurses, and of course the crew, and the various places and battlefields that were visited. If you are interested in hospital ships, if you are interested in understanding how passenger ships operated and ran as hospital ships, you cannot go wrong with this book. It is comprehensive and, as I said, beautifully illustrated and explicit. So hunt it down, check it out, and add it to your library. And if you are interested in any other hospital ship books, well, as you've seen, there's plenty out there for you to dig into and read and learn more. So read and enjoy, everyone.